We have begun to look at the beautiful passage of John 15. There are many beautiful passages in the Bible. That's what makes it so wonderful to study. So far, we have looked at the first two verses, and today we will begin with verse 3 of John 15. We read, "Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you." This is a very, very important statement. You are clean through the word. It's the word of God that provides cleansing. From time to time, as we read the Bible, as we study the Bible, we'll see a reference to cleansing or to becoming clean. And we can know it has to be a reference to the fact that our eyes are glued to the Bible, learning what we can from the Word of God. They don't come by osmosis. The cleansing does not come in some mysterious way. It comes through the words that Christ has spoken and which are now recorded in the Word of God. Incidentally, that's one of the reasons that we want to remember, if possible, as God is using the Bible as the foundation for studying in these days, that this is the way we get cleansing. We do not get cleansing just by kind of chatting about this and chatting about that. We get cleansing by listening to the Word of God, recognizing that this sentence or these words came from the very mouth of God Himself. Now, we are clean through that word, and now we're going to go on in verse 3 of chapter 15 of the Gospel of John. "Now ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you." Here God is focusing on the very part of these verses that provides cleansing. Cleansing isn't provided promiscuously. It's not provided just here or there somehow. God has a methodology when He is providing cleansing, and it is through the Word of God. The Word of God are the very words that Jesus spoke and which are contained in the Bible, and these become super important. We never handle them lightly. We never speak of them in a casual way. We always have in our thinking in the background, this is what Christ said, that I and others might be cleansed of our sin. Now, let's get back to verse 2. In verse 2 of this beautiful chapter, we saw that Christ purges, and we learned that purging is to be cleansed, completely cleansed. It is not just an idle word of some kind, but it means that we were dirty, and there isn't one human being in the world that did not come to a point where he could say, I never was dirty, I was always clean. No way. We all have become dirty just because we have associated with this world in the fact that we are born here and are growing up here. But regardless of how we are dirty, here's the answer of what's happening. Ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Notice the focal point is on the word. It's not on the atmosphere. It's not on some kind of a magnetic energy. It is because of what Christ is saying. Those words are super important. We never handle them lightly, no way. When we see that it is the Word of God, that's where the cleansing action comes from. Ye are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Notice which I have spoken. We're not clean through the word that some preacher spoke. We're not clean through the word through what some churches taught. We're not clean through the word because we just have heard some very nice sentences. It is the word that Christ has spoken. They come from the mouth of Christ. And who is Christ? He is eternal God, so that ultimately we know we are clean through the action of God Himself. Now in verse 2 of this chapter, we saw that Christ purges or cleanses the branches that bear fruit. He does not talk about cleansing something that is already dead. He's talking about that which is already being used of God to bring truth, but God is fully aware that anything in this earth is not going to remain clean. This is a dirty old world that we're living in. Let's face that. We don't have to hesitate about that. This is a dirty old world, but wonderfully, there is Christ standing by, ready to clean. He purges with His word right immediately as He looks at what He wants to clean. We saw that Christ purges or cleanses the branches that bear fruit. Now, if there's a dead branch on the tree, on the bush that Christ is looking at, the spiritual bush, He cuts it off. He cuts it away. He does not clean it up. He cleans up what is still viable, which still has hope, which still is useful to Christ. Christ purges. And that is the way He keeps His task going insofar as the process of bringing the gospel through the Word of God goes. And so we saw that the branches that bear fruit are purged in order that they may bring forth more fruit. They still bring the same fruit, but they're cleansed. When Christ here is saying that He does the purging, that He does the cleansing, we can rest assured that it's going to be a good cleansing. That is what encourages us to keep studying the Word, to find these kind of sentences in which He emphasizes that He is the one that does the cleansing. And here He indicates exactly what He is cleansing: the branches that bear fruit, in order that they may bring forth more fruit. The fact is that God has designed that tree so that certain branches are going to bear fruit. We're going to see the fruit. We're going to see that it's not bearing fruit the way it should. And we can get discouraged like everything until we read a sentence like this and we realize, no, Christ isn't going to throw it away. He's not going to get rid of it. First of all, He is going to cleanse it and purge it of all the sin, and that comes through the Word of God. That's why we bring the Word of God. That's why we listen to the Word of God, because all of us, if we are a child of God, have some knowledge of the Word of God. We have some contact with the Word of God, and God purges the sin out of our life that is keeping us from being more fruitful than we have been. And we can be so thankful for that. Our life is still honorable. Our life is still useful to God. Oh my, God is so wonderful. He is so kind to us that He is still using us. He doesn't bring in a whole other organization of some kind now to bear the fruit. He doesn't bring in some other means that He's never used before to bear the fruit. No, He takes what He's designed originally to bear fruit, and He takes the time to clean it up. And the next thing, as we are trying to share the gospel, we're going to find that we're saying it with new meaning and with new enthusiasm. And the next thing, we're going to see people who have been activated to bear fruit because they have been hearing it from a different vantage point. And so it is Christ, only Christ, who makes sure that the branches are going to continue to bear fruit and that they might bring more fruit. Maybe the fruit that we've been bringing has been very minuscule. We have become weary in our teaching. We've been weary in our study of the Bible, and yet Christ can come into our hearts and generate enthusiasm there. And the next thing, we're sharing something that has got some real punch to it, that's really working to accomplish what Christ wants to accomplish. Christ is cleaning up the true believers, and boy, do we need it. We need it because we live in a wicked world, and we by nature are sucked into that wickedness. It agrees with our personality far more than we want to admit. And yet when Christ comes and we're listening to Him, He cleanses us. Remember, Christ is the vine, and the believers are the branches. Christ is our source of life, not only at the beginning when He first began to use us to send the gospel out, but also as we continue to be re-cleansed and be again provided with enthusiasm and provided with ideas and statements that are true to the Word, and that all comes from Christ. It's not something that we can manufacture. It's not something that we can dream up, but because of our intense desire that God gives us to still be used of Him, why, lo and behold, indeed we are able to be used of Him. We find that there are sentences flowing from our mouth. There are phrases coming to us that we read at some place in the Bible, and it came from the mouth of God, and that fits right into the purpose of what we're trying to do, and that is to faithfully share the gospel.